and welcome to another video with me, Matt Goddard from the Boxing Locker, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the absolute one-sided annihilation, the decimation, the absolute hammering, the devastation, the destruction of Errol Spence Jr., the truth, against, of course, the undisputed welterweight champion of the world, Terence "Bud" Crawford, who is now only the second man in the modern era of multi-belt boxing to win the undisputed title, or the undisputed moniker, at 2 weight classes, after, of course, Evander Holyfield. Now, first and foremost, I want to say congratulations to Errol Spence Jr., who, in spite of being comfortably outboxed, put in a very, very brave performance. He didn't stop working. He didn't stop looking for the win. He didn't stop looking for the knockout, even when he was hurt. Obviously, we know he got dropped. We know he got damaged. We know he had a lot of bruising around his face. We know he was bleeding. But that man is as brave as they come, and absolutely 100% certifiably the second best welterweight on the planet. That is not in question. Now, let's break down the fight. Crawford. How did he win? How did he control the fight so easily? How did he so comfortably dominate Errol Spence? Now, something that I've mentioned in the past when discussing Errol Spence is the quality of his fundamentals. And what you have in Errol Spence is a guy with a very good jab, a very, very good jab, and a very good left hand. He's well balanced, he's got good composure, and he has very effective, simple defense. What you have in Terence Crawford is a guy who can do all of those things, exactly the same level as Errol Spence, but with that little bit of extra star quality on top. That's not to say that Errol Spence isn't exceptional. It's just that when you look at the list of great fighters, Terence Crawford will be up there. Errol Spence will still be sitting near the bottom. I've had a lot of debates with people on my Instagram channel talking about my pound for pound list and why Errol Spence isn't in it. And the reality is, for me, Errol Spence at best has always been sort of 9 or 10. Listen, remember, this is the 10 best boxers in the whole world. This isn't at all weights. This isn't just like out of a list of welterweights. You know, Errol Spence is and has always been to me the second best welterweight on the planet. And this isn't denigrating his quality or his skill set at all. This is just saying, when you look at Errol Spence's skills and you look at Terence Crawford's, and something that I mentioned in my prediction video for this fight that I recorded a long time ago, and that I've actually done 3 times and deleted previous ones when the fights have been cancelled. I'm not sure why I deleted them. I should have left them up there. The factor that overcomes is adaptability. And Spence, what he does, he's very good at. But what he does is singular of style, okay? It doesn't change. It hasn't ever changed for any opponent. He's boxed exactly the same everyone he's boxed. It just so happens that that's incredibly difficult for other guys to overcome. But Terence Crawford is not other guys. Terence Crawford is a very special fighter. He has a complex and comprehensive skill set. His adaptability and his ability to overcome the fluidity and rhythm of opponents is exceptional. First and foremost, we heard Crawford say after the fight, how did they take away the jab? And this is the funny thing, you know. That was their whole focus of the camp. They took away the most important punch in boxing from an opponent who had one of the best jabs in boxing. So with that in mind, you have to understand that Crawford was prepared for that jab. Now, if Spence only has 2, maybe 3 really, really, really exceptional attributes, and you take away the primary one, what you're left with is a secondary and tertiary attributes that kind of rely on that first one to happen. So by Crawford taking that away, what he did was he forced Errol Spence to be more rushed in his pursuit of attacks, to be more rushed in his pursuit of landing punches. And as such, he opened up his own counters far more effectively. And of course, he enabled himself to land when Spence was either walking onto shots or imbalanced. And that's the key. That's the real key to being an effective counterpuncher, walking opponents onto shots. Bud can punch on the back foot, he can punch moving laterally, he can punch moving either way, and he can work on the front foot. Okay. The great thing about that kind of ambidextrous method of boxing, where he has power in both hands, where he switches his feet, where he can stand square, southpaw, orthodox, is that it means he's going to carry power no matter where he hits you. He punches with an efficient and effective technical prowess that really deserves to be mentioned. The precision with which he throws his punches is beautiful. He rarely leans and puts himself out of balance, and when he does, it's deliberate. He always rolls or evades afterwards. He attacks with a jab that is varied but effective. He lands it stiff, he touches with it, he drives it down to the body. Particularly against Errol Spence, that was very effective. He takes the jab away with the lead hand and the rear hand. Okay, this is really important because his ability to switch feet means that he's never, ever in a position where he can't defend. Okay, his dexterity is excellent. So if he catches with that hand and the cross comes, he can turn and then he picks the nice short hook. His ability to work at varying ranges with the same level of output and power is just undeniably beautiful. You see him in close and he's throwing short lead uppercuts and short hooks and then working to the body and the head off the same hand. It's just brilliant without ever sacrificing his base or his defensive responsibility. He has them hands high, he's got his chin tucked. Another factor that people don't mention, because he was hit very rarely, but he was hit, is that this guy has got a very good chin. Okay, we've seen him shaken a couple of times, but only ever against very big shots. And nearly always, he immediately returns fire. Offense is the best defense. Defense is the best offense. Either way you spin it, that comes into play. You know, if you transition between defense and offense very quickly, if you transition between being hit and attacking, it prevents an opponent from developing momentum. And that's what really happened with Spence. He was never given an opportunity to develop momentum. He was never given an opportunity to develop his own cadence and force that upon Crawford. Crawford dominated from the outset. He was aggressively stepping towards him with his shoulder high. He was aggressively stepping across him to cut off the ring. He was moving backwards and then reinitiating the attack so that he was never disengaged entirely. He was always ready to re-engage. And as such, that broke Spence's ability to work at pace. It was just an unbelievable performance. And a friend of mine on Instagram said that he thinks maybe this is going to be the peak of Crawford. This is that kind of once in a lifetime night where all the stars align. Sorry guys, my mic cut out at that point, so I'm going to restart just on the regular audio. It might sound a little bit different. Apologies for that. Now, with that being said, I was just discussing that kind of all the stars alignment that my friend said about. But what I would say is I disagree in one factor. I think Crawford has at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 of those nights ahead of him. He doesn't look like he's anywhere near the kind of limit of his capacity. I think it'll be interesting to see how he moves up in weight. That then segues me nicely onto the next part, which is what is next for both fighters. Errol Spence said he wants the rematch against Crawford at 154. Crawford says he's happy to move up to 154. Crawford needs a warm-up for the Charlo fight, so I think Spence in the rematch would be good for that. Do I think Spence has a better chance at 154? No, not after that performance. I think the psychology of losing in the manner he lost, it wasn't that he was just outboxed because he was drained. It wasn't that he was just caught badly 3 or 4 times because he was drained. It was that he was comprehensively and definitively outboxed, outfought, outworked, outpunched, outmuscled in every aspect of his boxing, and that his style was completely undone by Crawford. And I don't think you can overcome the psychology of that. And I think all it will take is a couple of shots to land to trigger the memory of that happening. And I think we would have either a repeat or an even earlier stoppage in a second fight. I think Crawford would carry the weight perfectly fine. He manages his training exceptionally well. He's obviously got a good program chart, a good program tracking in place to ensure that he's at the peak of his powers on fight night. He's very strong physically, so he works his strength. He's got great endurance, so he works his stamina. He's got excellent cardio, so his engine work is there. He's in the gym all the time, so he's consistent. That ability consistently compounds itself because he's in the gym working non-stop. His skill set seems to be getting more and more advanced. His competence and comfort in the pocket seems to be getting better. And I think the harder the opponent, the better the Terence Crawford that we get, to be honest with you. So I think he would stop Spence again after seeing that first fight. I think Spence will then go on to continue being successful at welterweight, and potentially we might even see a Spence versus Jaron Ennis fight at some time in the future, which would also be really interesting. Otherwise, I think then Crawford goes on to box Charlo, and I think he would also defeat Charlo. Irrelevant of Charlo's result against Canelo. Again, that's one of those fights that really doesn't affect people's perception and shouldn't affect people's perception. Losing to other great boxers really isn't a big deal in this modern age. Since the kind of Mayweather era, everyone's become obsessed with protecting that O, and it's rubbish. It's perfectly fine to lose as long as the guys you are losing to are worthy of defeating you. The questions come when you lose to an opponent who isn't considered or deemed worthy of defeating you. And then you have to question, why has that happened? Is that down to the fighter? Is that down to them being at the wrong weight? Or is it just down to the other guy being stylistically very difficult for them? You know, that does occasionally happen. However, that is not the case with Spencer Crawford, and that would not be the case with Charlo Canelo, and that would not be the case with Crawford Charlo. Great fighters should be competing with each other, and when they do, somebody's got to lose, and that really shouldn't affect how people perceive them. As I said, I personally had Spence at the very, very periphery of my top 10 pound for pound, and I moved him out only based off other results that have happened recently and wanting to get certain names still in there. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do a pound for pound list, and realistically it would be far easier for me to do a top 5 pound for pound and then everyone below that be kind of interchangeable. I mean, you know, for me there is no one beyond Crawford, Inoue, Canelo, Usyk, maybe just about Beterbiev, and then for the future I think Shakur Stevenson. But those names are without doubt the peak of the sport right now. And some people would say Bivol again. Do you see what I mean? There's so much interchangeability, and it's not easy to know which way we're going with that. So anyway, with that being said, Crawford is number one. He is the man. He is pound for pound the best boxer on the planet. He will go down as the best boxer of the 2020s, in my opinion. Followed at the end of his career by Shakur Stevenson taking over that mantle. In my opinion, once again, I should quantify with that all the time because otherwise people get real butthurt by it. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Any questions you have about what I've said today, please do ask. I love interacting with everybody on my YouTube channel. I think that people who watch my long form content are the ones that are really genuinely interested in boxing and in my opinion. So I'm always enthusiastic about discussing things with you. Hope you have a wonderful day. As always, thank you for watching the video and take care of yourselves.